Hello, friends. Welcome to my YouTube channel, The 5 Pager. My voice, your choice. The purpose of this channel is to motivate the listeners to read books. And for today's edition, I bring to you Arjuna, Saga of a Pandava Warrior Prince by Anuja Chandramuoli. Arjuna's story. Arjuna was the son of Kunti Devi and Pandu, a scion of the illustrious Kuru clan. But unlike most mortals, he also had a divine father, and the events surrounding his birth were mysterious and magical. Pandu, or the Pale One, was the second son of Vichitravirya and Ambalika, and the father of Arjuna. His own birth took place under quite unusual circumstances. Ambika and Ambalika were the wives of Vichitravirya. Unfortunately, Vichitravirya was afflicted by a wasting sickness and died young, leaving his two wives childless. His elder brother Chitrangada had been killed even earlier by a belligerent Gandharva by the same name. Bhishma, the half brother of the deceased monarch, was the sole surviving prince. He was also eminently suited to ascend the throne, but he had taken a terrible vow for the sake of his father, King Shantanu, forfeiting his right to the throne as well as his natural right to procreate. He thus refused the throne and also turned down the suggestion made by his stepmother to marry his dead half brother's wives and beget heirs to secure the Kuru line. At this critical juncture, the queen mother Satyavati suggested that the young wives of Vichitravirya be impregnated by her other son, who was none other than Vedvyas. The famed sage was born to her of sage Parashahara in her youth. Bhishma listened with wonder to her story and said, Mother, your wisdom is unparalleled. The scriptures have stated that one of the principal duties of a Kshatriya is to ensure that his line does not die out. If circumstances prevent him from doing his duty, it is recommended that the wife bear children with a worthy man who is the equal or superior of her husband, and the offspring will carry the name of the husband. The Kuru line will be eternally grateful to the noble Vedvyas if he would honor us by blessing Vichitravirya's wives so that they bear worthy sons. Satyavati summoned her son, who had already gained fame for classifying the Vedas. Vyasa dutifully arrived and stood ready to do her bidding. He agreed to keep the Kurus and ensure the continuity of their line, provided Ambika and Ambalika were willing to accept him despite his unattractive face, unkempt appearance, and unwashed body with its powerful odor. That night, Ambika was so appalled at the venerable Brahmin's appearance and his lack of hygiene that she kept her eyes tightly closed throughout their time together. Emerging from the bedchamber, Vyasa said to the anxious Satyavati, Ambika will bear a noble son, but he will be blind. The queen was aghast and begged him to father another child with Ambalika, as a blind man could hardly be expected to take on the mantle of kingship. Vyasa consented and went to visit Ambalika. The young lady masked her loathing of the unappealing Brahmin better than her sister had done, although the effort turned her pale and vain. Consequently, Vyasa foretold that the son born to her would bear pale in appearance but a mighty warrior. Satyavati was satisfied with her son's labors, but just to be safe, she requested him to provide another son for the Kuru line. But by then, Ambika had had enough and sent in her maid instead, dressed in her apparel. Vyasa was not fooled, however, and blessed the maid with a virtuous son. Thus were born of three women Dhritarashtra with the unseeing eyes, Pandu the pale one, and Vidur the wise. Pandu was placed on the throne when he came of age. The young ruler was assisted ably by Bhishma in the considerable task of governing his kingdom. Pandu was a model ruler and undertook many military campaigns which expanded the boundaries of the Kuru kingdom and filled the royal coffers in empty measure. He had two good wives, Kunti and Madri. Life was good, and for a time it appeared that Providence had only its bounties to shower on the young king. But flighty fortune was not a loyal mistress to Pandu. Storm clouds darkened the horizon, casting their pall on his future and signaling tumultuous times for him and his line. One day, Pandu went out hunting to relax from the challenges of government. Lost in the pleasure of the hunt, his care slipped away even as bloodlust warmed his blood and inflamed his senses. Suddenly, he came upon a handsome deer sporting with its mate. Pandu took aim and let fly an arrow that flew true to its target and inflicted a mortal wound on the unsuspecting creature. As implacable fate would have it, the deer that lay in its death throes was in fact a rishi's son, who was himself a powerful ascetic. He had taken the form of a deer to camouflage the act of love with his wife in the sylvan glade. Made to die violently at that climatic moment, he directed his vengeful wrath at Pandu and cursed him. Unworthy one, since you saw it fit to take the life of an innocent creature at such an inopportune moment, you too shall forfeit your life when you clasp your mate in sexual embrace. Utterly dismayed, Pandu tried in vain to placate the dying ascetic, pleading, "Alas, I was only trying to capture my quarry, using the gifts of a hunter and a Kshatriya. Show mercy, for I do not deserve such a fate." But his pleas were in vain. The dear sage was adamant. It is not becoming of a Kshatriya prince to kill his prey when it is at its most vulnerable and without the means to defend itself. Such deplorable conduct ought to be punished as an example to others who are carried away by bloodlust and forget to stay true to the dictates of Dharma. You deserve your fate. Thus, spewing the venom of his terrible anger on the ill fated prince, he breathed his last. Bemoaning the turn of affairs, Pandu decided to retire from kingship and become a wandering ascetic. He took to severe austerities to cleanse his soul of the debilitating misery and grief that threatened to overwhelm him. His two wives refused to remain behind and swore to follow him to the ends of the earth as their lives were irrevocably tied to his for better or for worse. Much to the sorrow of the royal household and the people of the kingdom, King Pandu left, never to return. The life of an ascetic, despite the tremendous hardships involved, suited Pandu and his wives, far removed from the decadent luxuries and worldly cares of the court. However, Pandu still had one worry, and it gnawed within him, destroying the very peace of mind for which he had abandoned all his royal trappings. He confided his distress to his wife Kunti, saying, "It is my duty to produce worthy sons who will carry on my name, make amends for my sins, and enhance my legacy." Manu himself was asserted that a man who leaves this earth without begetting sons is derelict in his duty. It is truly unfortunate that I am unable to fulfill this one requirement essential for passage to heaven. "Let us pray to the gods for a solution, my lord," said Kunti, unwavering in her faith in divine beneficence. "We will pray, but I have given this matter much thought, and I want you to bear my children by meeting with a worthy man of your choosing. The scriptures condone this practice, and so neither of us will incur sin thereby," spoke the suffering prince. "How can you even suggest such a thing?" Kunti asked, repulsed by the suggestion. "Not even in my thoughts could I entertain another man. I belong solely to you, and death shall claim me before I allow even a man's shadow to touch me." "You must not allow emotions to cloud your thinking, Kunti. I am well aware that I am married to the most virtuous woman in the three worlds. But listen carefully to what I say. There is nothing wrong with what I suggest. In days of yore, women were not subject to the restrictions that have resulted in their leading such cloistered lives as they do today. They were allowed to move about freely and have as many partners as they pleased, marital status notwithstanding. It may seem strange to us with our rigid rules regarding sexual intercourse, but in those days people behaved like the animals we see around us and were uninhibited where their bodily needs were concerned. Nobody considered such behavior sinful, and passions like anger and jealousy simply did not exist. It was considered a natural and healthy practice in keeping with the original laws of Dharma. And then things changed abruptly when the rishi Swetaketu enforced laws about morality and sexuality. What happened to bring about the change? Kunti asked, fascinated despite herself. So these were the 5 pages for this edition. I hope you enjoyed it. I would love to hear your suggestions and feedbacks. If you are interested in purchasing the book, I have provided a link to buy it online. Happy reading!